Good morning, Hockey Nuts. Today's Friday, October 14th, 2016. Last night was day 2 of the NHL season. And if you thought the first day of the NHL season was exciting, holy crap, there was plenty to go around last night too. I don't even know where to start. There were 9 games around the league last night, and let me just start by running down a list of all the scores, but get those out of the way. In the first game, Montreal went into Buffalo and beat the Sabres 4-1. The Rangers hosted the Islanders, beat them 5-3. The Bruins went into Columbus and beat them 6-3. The Lightnings hosted the Red Wings, beat them 6-4. The Devils went into Florida, and Florida beat the Panthers 2-1. The Capitals had to watch the Penguins raise their banner last night. And the Penguins actually won that game 3-2. And in the final 3 games last night, the Blues hosted the Wild, beat them 3-2. The Jets I had someone coming on the ramp there that wasn't sure she wanted to go as fast as us. And I'm barely going the speed limit. Anyway, the Jets hosted the Carolina Hurricanes and beat them 5-4 in overtime. And in the final game of the night, Dallas hosted the Ducks and beat them 4-2. So those are all your scores for the NHL last night. And now, as for some of my thoughts, we'll go back up to the start. In the Montreal-Buffalo game, I didn't see the game. But there are a few things that happened that I saw during the highlights. Number one, they showed the Evander Kane injury, which definitely made me cringe when I saw it. But it didn't look like it was a malicious play of any kind on the part of the Montreal player. In fact, I don't even know who he got tangled up with. But both players were racing into the corner after the puck. Looked like they were trying to beat out an icing. And I'm not even sure if that was why they were racing into the corner after the puck. But both players were going into the corner. And it looked like both players kind of got their feet tangled up with each other. Kane tried to stop and essentially blew a tire. His feet came out from under him. And he went into the boards. He fell down probably, 8, maybe 10 feet away from the boards at full speed, or pretty close to it anyway. And he slid into the boards. He kind of slid into the boards sideways, so his feet and shoulders hit the boards about the same time. But he hit the boards hard. And he was down for several minutes and had to be helped off the ice. And they ended up taking him to the hospital from the reports that I saw. So hopefully Patrick Kane will come back fairly quickly from that, but at this point we don't know what, or at least I haven't seen any reports of his injuries. So so that was one thing that came out of that game. Another thing that came out, I saw Brendan Gallagher had a couple of goals, and if I remember right, he spent a good part of last season injured. So to see him come back at full strength should be good for Montreal anyway. Now the next game, the Rangers-Islanders. And actually, before I go and talk on that, all the games last night started at either 7 or 8 o'clock. There was no 10 o'clock West Coast games. So all 9 games were real packed right together in the schedule. So I wasn't able to watch much of all 9, partly because my favorite team, the Boston Bruins, were playing, and I was watching most of their game. And I would flip to the other games in between periods and during commercial breaks. So I didn't get to see much of the other games outside of the Boston game. But anyway, moving on. The Islanders and the Rangers. Rangers came out and beat the Islanders 5-3 in that game. I know Henrik Lundqvist played a very good game in that game. Pretty much typical of Henrik Lundqvist. Chris Kreider had a goal. Yeah, actually 5 different players on the Rangers had goals. And I know Zibanejad got his first goal as a Ranger, I believe, and Buchnevich, which is one of their young rookies that they're pretty high on, he ended up getting an assist anyway, at least one assist, which would have been his first NHL point of his young career. So all around good performance for the Rangers. And they get off to a good start by winning their first game of the year. Wow. Car that passed me had quite a collision. Pretty banged up. Now in the next game, Boston and Columbus. That's the game I did watch a lot of. Mostly because Boston's my favorite team. Didn't look good there for Boston in that game for a while. Fairly quickly into the first period, can't remember exactly when it was, but I got out of work at 7 last night and was driving home, so I was listening to the game on my way home. And before I even got home, it was 1-0 Columbus. So within the first half of the first period anyway, Columbus jumped out to the 1-0 lead. And at that point, I do remember that Boston pretty much had owned the play before Columbus got that first goal. And then Columbus came down and scored on their very first shot of the game. And it was a shot that, if you ask most experts, that Tuukka Rask should have had. So he kind of just reached out to glove it. It was actually his right hand, but he went out to catch it, and it off the glove and into the net. So he definitely would have loved to have that one back. And then I believe it was early in the second when Columbus jumped out to a 2-0 lead. So at 2-0, almost halfway through the game, I was thinking, oh boy, here we go. But the Boston scored the next goal, made it 2-1, and then shortly after that, Columbus went out to a 3-1 lead. So it really wasn't looking good for Boston at one point in that game. But you could tell that the Bruins seemed to be getting better and better as the game went on, because there's really a lot of new guys. There was 4 guys in the NHL or in the Boston lineup making their NHL debut last night, and that was Heinen, Carlo, Shari, and Austin Czarnik were all making their NHL debuts last night. So, and then on top of that, it was David Backes' officially his first game as a Boston Bruin, not counting the preseason stuff. So it's a new look team. A quarter of the team's completely different. They had Backes on the top line with Marchand and who was skating with them? David Pastrnak was skating with them. So it took a while for the Bruins to get going, but once they got going, that was it. They were down 3-1 midway through the game, and then they ended up coming back and scoring 5 unanswered goals to take the game 6-3. And the third period, Boston looked better in the third period than the other 2 periods for sure. I was really, really impressed with their play in the third period. They really took it to them and just simply outworked them. So, but as far as individual highlights in the game, Brad Marchand had a huge game last night. He got 5 points last night, 2 goals, 3 assists. So we figured in and his line, the Backes, Marchand, and Pastrnak line was on the ice for all 6 of Boston's goals. So that's definitely a good sign there. And if that continues, when Bergeron comes back, they may consider putting Bergeron on another line, but who knows what they'll do there. So in the next game, the Red Wings and the Lightning played a game. That was in Tampa Bay. And I didn't actually watch that game at all, other than just seeing score updates from while watching the other games. And I do know that at one point Detroit had a 2-0 lead in that game, but ultimately Tampa Bay came back and won that game 6-4. So in the next game, the Devils and the Panthers, again, that was a game I wasn't able to see because I was too busy watching other games. But the Panthers did win that one, 2-1. And I did hear that Jágr he's at 749 goals. So there's a Jágr watch right now for him to get his 750th. So that could happen obviously at any night. But anyway, Panthers came out and won that one 2-1. The Penguins-Capitals game, that was in Pittsburgh, 3-2, so it was the home opener for them. And obviously it was a nationally televised game. Of course, I didn't watch that. I was busy watching the Bruins, and I had the Hurricanes game on my television. But that was the banner raising night, and that was another reason why I didn't watch that game. Is I don't really care to see other teams raising their banner. What do we got going on up here? So yeah, it was their banner raising night. And usually what happens in these banner raising nights, at least the last several years, when a team has that kind of a celebration, it usually is an extended celebration. I think the game was scheduled for 7 o'clock, didn't really get started till almost 7:30. And that was as a result of that banner raising. But usually the teams that are the beneficiary of those celebrations end up coming out flat and usually lose the game. Usually when they have either a banner raising or a number retire or any kind of extended celebration or ceremony, that usually doesn't bode well for the home team, because the visiting team is still in the locker room during that ceremony, just getting ready to play, and the home team's got to be out there just standing around. So it usually doesn't do well. But Pittsburgh found a way to win last night, and beating the Capitals 3-2 in that game. It was a shootout, so the game was close, could have gone either way. And back to the Panthers-Devils, that was an overtime game as well. The next game, Blues-Wild, didn't watch any of that. I did see highlights, and I did see that Nail Yakupov got his first goal as a St. Louis Blue. So that was good to see on him. And it was kind of a nice individual play. You have to see the highlights to see it, but it was a pretty good play. The next game, Hurricanes and Jets, I watched the rest of that game after the Bruins game got done, and was pretty disappointed in the outcome. Obviously, I live in the Carolinas, so I don't want, there's a lot of speculation that the Carolinas might be moving, and all that speculation is coming from everywhere else around the country. Everything we're hearing here, and everything the owners and the management is telling us here, is that the Canes aren't going anywhere. They are looking for a new buyer, but they're looking for a new buyer that wants to keep the team here. And the league is also on board with that. The league wants to stay in this market, mostly because it's a very fast-growing market. There's a lot of transplants from the north here. There's a very large hockey fan base in this area. They're just not they're generally not Hurricanes fans. So yeah, there's a lot of effort to get this team back into to being able to compete at a regular level with everybody else. But last night they jumped out to a 4-1 lead. It was 3-1 after 2 going into the third, and then they scored another goal early in the third to go out 4-1. So I was thinking, oh well, Hurricanes are going to win their first game of the year. Well, funny thing happened. Winnipeg came back and tied that game 4-4. And they tied it in the last minute after pulling their goalie. And then they came out into overtime, and about 3 minutes or so into overtime, they scored their winning goal, and I can't remember who scored the goal right off the top of my head, but either way, Winnipeg did win that game in overtime 5-4. So in a way, it really felt like a loss. Even though the Canes got a point out of the game, they really should have gotten 2. If you have a 4-1 lead in the third, you should be able to hang on and seal that up for a win. Isn't that right, Toronto? That's a reference to the playoff game a few years ago when Boston came back from a 4-1 deficit in the third and won the game, and it was Game 7. Won the game and the series over Toronto. Toronto fans still are hurt by that one. Anyway, so that leaves us with the last game of the night, the Ducks and the Stars. The Stars won that one 4-2. I didn't watch any of that one because by the time the Hurricanes Jets game ended, that one was pretty much ending too. So I only saw a couple of minutes of that one. But yeah, that was a pretty good game as well, from what I understand. So, overall, the competition has been pretty good. The games have been pretty entertaining. Pretty happy that the Bruins are off to a 1-0 start already. And I don't know, the only other thing that has bothered me so much in this early part of the season is the amount of injuries that are happening around the league. I mentioned the Evander Kane one earlier. Jonathan Quick from a couple of nights ago, from opening night. Jonathan Quick hurt his groin. And it looked like Tuukka Rask might have hurt himself a little bit as well. He had one moment in the game last night where he almost did the same move that Quick did and kicked his leg out to make a save. And he was a little slow to get up, so I'd be curious to see if there's any repercussions from that today. He ended up finishing the game, but sometimes those injuries don't make themselves apparent until the next game. So I guess we'll see. Okay. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm arriving at work today, or just now, so I will go ahead and end the morning drive. And until then, we'll see you tomorrow.